Live from Studio E, it's Fox and Friends, the #1 cable morning news show. And by the way, I learned in the Variety the other day, we are the #1 show on all of cable for the next 3 hours.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Including all the channels. Thanks to you.
Good thing I got you a subscription to the trades for Christmas.
Thanks to you. Welcome back, by the way. Nice job.
Thank you very much. But, you know, it was amazing. There were a lot of people flying down, a lot of TV producers flying down to Dallas for Ebola.
Absolutely.
And because we want to find out what's going on there and find out what's going on with any other cases.
Well, a lot more is happening to that note, Brian. We have a Fox News alert on it for you now. A news photographer for NBC just diagnosed with Ebola in Africa. Fears of an outbreak spreading fast. As we learned, more people in Texas came in contact with the infected patient, Thomas Duncan. Leland Vittert is live in Washington, D.C. with the very latest. Good morning to you, Leland. The news is not seeming to get better when it comes to Ebola.
Oh, for sure not, Elizabeth. This NBC News photographer makes 4 Americans working in Liberia to contract the virus so far. The network identifies him as this man, Ashiko Mukpo, a freelancer for the network. He has worked in the country for 3 years, and much like the other Americans before him, he will be flown back to the United States for treatment. The rest of his team is going to fly back on a private charter and then isolate themselves for 21 days. That's the incubation period of Ebola. This, as we learn, the man who brought Ebola to the United States lied on his exit form so he could leave Liberia. He denied contact with Ebola patients, even though we know he helped several people before hopping on the plane. Now, as many as 100 people are being monitored for Ebola after the Liberian man visited Dallas. His family is also under quarantine.
Nobody is supposed to go inside the apartment. They are in their apartment. They cannot come out. They are not even allowed to come on the porch. CDC is communicating with them. They are going there. They are monitoring them every day, couple of hours, couple of times.
But this morning, a local Dallas station reports 5 Dallas County Sheriff's officers did enter the quarantine department and are now on leave as well as being monitored. They were there to serve a court order. The Sheriff's office has bagged their uniforms and cleaned their squad cars. Local reports indicate there is increasing friction about the quarantine family, with local officials upset they're being asked to carry out CDC instructions without proper training or help from the feds. Elizabeth, back to you.
Leland, thank you for that update. We will stay with that throughout the morning. My goodness.
Yeah, and just the news that those guys are in quarantine now, or, you know, they're being monitored because they walked right in.
Yeah.
And the Sheriff's Department down in Dallas now is angry because they said, look, they didn't even have to be there. This is a federal thing, so they had to bag up all their clothes. Their squad cars have been taken out of service as well. So what we did learn in Leland's report is that if you are in West Africa and you want to get into the United States, there are 2 things you can do, actually. One is just lie on the paperwork.
Yep.
That's what this guy did. He simply lied because on the paperwork it said, so have you touched anybody with Ebola? He said no. The other thing, and this is something I just saw over on the NBC News site, and that is if you take, before you get on the plane, you got a fever, take ibuprofen. Because NBC says that's all it takes to avoid the Ebola screening process. You know, they've got those wands or the guns. Yeah, it brings down the fever enough so you could get on the plane and get into the United States.
And quick question, if you happen to have Ebola, right, and we think you may, because you've been in contact with somebody, and you are in West Africa, where would you want to go to get proper treatment?
Right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
All right,
so easy to get in.
So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and clearly we're underreacting in a lot of cases and trying to make it up as we go along, despite what everyone keeps telling us. But a friend, adding to the mystery here and the dismay for many, a friend of Thomas Duncan has come out and said, you know, after he watched his friend vomiting wildly, after he left, was told he could leave the hospital, he was clear, then he had to go back, as you know. Aaron Yah revealed, that's his friend, that he had not received an order to remain indoors or got any advice on how to cope with the fact that he might have been exposed to the Ebola virus. The CDC came in on Tuesday and said it was confirmed that his buddy had it. They told me that the children should not go to school until October 17th, and that was it.
3 days. 3 days they waited to give instruction. And no, a little vague on whether or not they should stay home, stay indoors, really undergo full quarantine.
Well, the reason that those cops are now in quarantine or isolation or whatever is because they went in to make sure that the family signed this court order that says we're not going to leave. Well, apparently the woman who Mr. Duncan had come from Liberia to visit, and she refers to herself as his wife, his longtime partner. Louise, who also is a home health aide, which is handy, she's there with a 13-year-old child and 2 adult nephews as well. She says she's getting sick and tired of being locked up. And, you know, first of all, why are they still in the apartment? But the other thing is she was complaining, she did a call-in show where she said, we're still in the same apartment with his sheets and his towels and his mess, and nobody's told us what to do. Apparently, a crew did come in yesterday, late last night, to try to do something about it. We don't know the disposition of the bags that they put everything.
They couldn't originally get in because of permit issues, correct?
Right, exactly. And then also the Red Cross did bring them some food yesterday because earlier somebody had just simply brought them sandwiches, and that's the exterior of their apartment there at the Ivy Apartments. And this is a guy. Brian, you were just talking about the friend who said, I don't know, am I supposed to be not leaving the house? I didn't know. He said that Mr. Duncan had been vomiting wildly, and there you see a guy outside the apartment, the Ivy, with a power washer.
Which anyone
no
has
mask, no nothing. Whatever he's washing off, going right down the street.
Well, and down and up. I mean, if you've used a power washer, there is some rebound
Mist.
there, the
Sure.
mist that does come up. So, I mean, you would wonder why the proper equipment
Look at
wasn't
that poor
being
guy.
used. You know, the CDC did warn that the outbreak could reach 1.4 million cases by the end of January globally without proper intervention. It doesn't seem as though we're seeing proper intervention being played out here. And one doctor kind of took it into his own hands yesterday, traveling through an Atlanta airport in full protective gear to protest against the center's handling, or mishandling, as some would say, of the Ebola outbreak. Take a listen to him.
He's a doctor.
They didn't ask where I'd been. They didn't ask if I'd been sick, nor any other arriving patients in the international concourse. They asked if I had tobacco or alcohol. That is it. The CDC is asleep at the wheel.
Listen, we have to. Somebody's got to get a hold of this. I mean, this could really get out of control very soon. Doesn't seem like anyone's in charge. Everyone is saying, "Wait a second, there's nobody behind the wheel."
You're seeing this. This gentleman right here is a microbiologist. Okay, and on the back of that hazmat suit that he's wearing, by his own will, in protest and protection, some would argue, it says the center is lying. I mean, this is something that is gravely concerning. People, it's a 50 to 90% chance of dying when you contract Ebola. A big deal if they're not enforcing the proper checks at the airport.
You know, Brian, you're right. We got to get a handle on things. And we had Thomas Frieden, doctor who heads up the CDC, with us a couple of days ago and asked about, isn't it time to stop the air travel from West Africa? He said, no, absolutely not. You know what? It probably is.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Let's just stop it until we get a handle on things.
He's going to be with us this morning. We can maybe pose that question to him again and perhaps get a different answer as to travel restrictions.
Well, I hope they're thinking about it.
All right.